All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Shana Horwitz. I'm a director here at the New York Climate Exchange, and we have a packed agenda today. So I'm just going to dive right in, and people will continue to join us. For those of you not yet familiar with the Exchange, we are an organization on a mission to accelerate climate solutions. And we're building a campus on Governor's Island, mobilizing a broad network of change makers and launching programs that help us tackle the biggest climate threats to our city and to cities globally. Today marks a really special milestone for the Exchange. We're celebrating the culmination of our first Climate Tech Fellow cohort. We launched this program last year, welcoming on board the 8 fellows you're going to hear from today. Get some waves in the audience. And they are affiliated with 6 of our university partners, and they are really incredible early stage climate innovators working to commercialize solutions. Through the fellowship, they've received non-dilutive funding, one-to-one mentorship. They've gone through venture building curricula, and they've connected with many people across the Exchange network, including in person during Climate Week. Today offers a chance to introduce them to a wider audience and to really reflect on the progress that they've made over the last 6 months and the journey that's ahead for each of them as they continue on their path from lab to market. Okay, so to kick things off, we have a discussion with Xiao Liu. Hi, Jesse.
Hello, hello.
I want to welcome you into the conversation. Jesse is co-founder and CEO of Recursion Works, where he supports early stage climate and deep tech teams to build and own their techno-economic models as a core decision-making tools. So if T and the concept of T is new to you, just wait. You will be learning all about it with Jesse. We're going to get into what drives his focus on T modeling and kind of the potential that he sees to really level up those tools and approaches. But by way of background, prior to starting Recursion Works, Jesse was a fellow at Breakthrough Energy. He was a product lead in the AI and insurance space and a consultant at McKinsey. He holds a BS in industrial engineering from Columbia and an MBA from Harvard, which is all to say he can very much relate to many of our fellows and the teams that we've been supporting. So, Jesse, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I want to just start by asking, what inspired you to launch Recursion Works, and specifically, what role do you see techno-economic analysis playing for early stage climate founders?
Yeah, and thanks for the introduction and great to see everyone. I feel like it's only appropriate. I live in Queens, but yes, love New York. Um, I think as part of that introduction too, there was like a blip in my, broader LinkedIn background that was a big part of kind of why I do and what I, do with Rosie, my co-founder. I was briefly a founder myself, working with a postdoc, looking to spin a technology out of the lab. We were, had this amazing technology. It was like this algae that was growing faster than it had ever been described in the literature. We were like, wow, like this, there's something here we can build a company around. It's going to be amazing. And it was in the process of building out the strategy, building out kind of our go-to-market planning and thinking about like the R&D roadmap, et cetera, where this idea of, is there even a business here? We have an amazing technology, amazing platform that really, pushes the frontier of science. But is there a business here? And then how do we work backward from that future conceptualization of a business? And long story short, building the TEA to us told us that like maybe there wasn't quite enough of a business there, and that we were actually quite a little bit in over our skis. And so we didn't end up spinning out. We got to have time back, and we didn't end up taking investor capital, and that enabled me to then be a fellow at Breakthrough Energy to work with more teams. And I think it's this idea of being able to help early stage teams think about this idea of commercial viability. Is there a business here? Are there enough people who are willing to pay for what you want to work on? Can you do the thing for less money than someone would pay for you? That's really inspiration for our Recursion Works to ultimately scale this kind of, techno-economic commercialization support to not just the teams that we work with, manually, but also building a much larger, and we can talk more about this later, but we're building under the TEA Commons, which is kind of open source, open access tooling and data to be able to scale this to what we think is like an order of magnitude of a million or so entrepreneurial scientists around the world.
Amazing. And I really like what you said, and I think it will again resonate with a lot of people here in the room with us, which is developing new technologies is incredibly exciting and hard and rewarding work, but it doesn't necessarily equate to a 1 billion-dollar company, right? So kind of getting excited about the technology, advancing that, then there are a series of fundamental questions and kind of milestones that you need to reach to really decide whether there's a there and what that path to market is ultimately going to look like. Can you talk through a little bit? Well, one, just I want to, for the benefit of everyone in the room, sort of what does it look like to do T modeling? So someone comes to you and they're like, I got to get my head around this. I've got to start. Can you just sort of break it down in the most simple terms? What does it include? And then more specifically, what do you see as some of the pitfalls that are common when teams start to embrace this particular work stream or start to undertake this for the first time?
Yeah, so I might break it down into a couple of things. One is just at the super tippy top level. So a techno-economic analysis, a TEA, all it is it's some kind of uh, financial estimate or kind of some kind of model to say, is there like how do we kind of take the potential revenues, the potential costs of a technology, fast forward into the future when it scales, and what does the economics look like there? And especially when a lot of companies, a lot of new climate technologies are trying to break into existing commodity markets where they also scale, like cost is super important and to be able to be cost competitive and not just greener. And so understanding that economic viability is super critical. And so a TEA, it can be a fancy, super in-depth model. Some scientists, PhD postdocs will have worked with Aspen or like simulation models. If anything, we try to approach this as like, what is kind of like a simple-ish model that captures all the big rocks that gives you some sense of is there a target market where there's enough people out there who are willing to pay? So it's kind of integrated, as well as on the cost side, what are some of the big rocks that you need to be accounting for? What does that process flow look like in some existing industry that you're trying to break into, where you would be slotting out kind of one unit operation, and are you moving the needle? And it's that kind of rough estimate of, is there an economic story there? And I think a big part of this too is early on, it's going to be rough. And so you have to just be very iterative and collect data as you're going, talking to people during discovery, collect more data and, see what comes out. It's kind of like this like machine, right? You put some inputs, you get an estimate out, see, where you land. I think a lot of teams early on are also a little freaked out if they see that their TEA shows that they're not going to make money. And I think the early versions of a TEA, and this is kind of getting to some of the pitfalls. I think there is like this cold start problem of like, how do you get started? So be scrappy, kind of start with what you have, put it on paper, get the kind of technology mapped into paper and can start getting some sense of economics. And then another, I think, common failure mode is that I think teams ascribe sometimes like too much weight to the actual number that comes out of it. So it's less
Mhm.
so I'm going to land on like this side of the fence or that side of the fence. It's, am I in the ballpark? Your estimates are going to be so rough early on. If you're like 50% off or like even 100% off, that's okay. If you're like 1,000% off, then that's like cause for timeout. Like let's kind of reevaluate or talk to people. Um, yeah. So a
Yeah.
couple of thoughts there.
Yeah, that's great. And I love you mentioned this just briefly, but so many early stage founders, particularly if they've gone through or are planning to go through programs like iCore, they're very familiar with the kind of rigor and structure of customer discovery. But remembering that each of those conversations and touch points with someone new also offers a way to continue to stress test and kind of put into practice what they're learning on the side of the T model and kind of get new information again, iterate again, see what comes out, continuously try to yeah, just be learning and be iterative, which is at the end of the day part of being a founder. You referenced it moments ago, but want to give you a chance to go a little bit deeper with this T Commons effort that you're working on. Supporting early stage innovators really can take a lot of one-on-one type of work. And this is something that we think about a lot at the exchange as well, as how do you scale that? How do you sort of give the time and attention and specificity that each team requires, but also think about the many, many teams worldwide who could benefit from something like this. And so I love what you're doing with T Commons, because I think it's a really novel and creative way to think about moving from this kind of very one-to-one type of human interaction, and trying to level that up to make these resources available to a wider ecosystem of people. But maybe you can talk more about that.
Yeah, I think, and the quick comment there is, like we would love, so we do a lot of our work. We do almost all of our work one-to-one. And I think that's like the best way to like really, like I learn differently, and like you try to get a sense of like how they learn, or like kind of what people's baselines are. And so this kind of personalized, idiosyncratic coaching that we do, we think is like the best way. Kind of like driving school, right? Like
Mhm.
we're the kind of sitting next to you and they're driving. And I think teams have to be building their own mental models themselves. Like when you're merging onto the highway, you got to get comfortable with that. And like the synapses have to connect in your head. And so there's that element that we're some kind of way are trying to figure out how to scale. And so we're not going to be able to get all the way there. But the trade-off is there are so many early stage teams and scientists that are out there thinking about applied technologies. And so how do we kind of bridge the gap? So the way that we think about it is there, rather than kind of lead with like being AI first and whatnot, it's kind of what is like what out of the box value is there to be able to support teams all over the world. And we see that as data. So like, and I think similar to New York Climate Exchange, like, well aligned on like, I think data being like a really core part of the platform, like a foundation kind of
Mhm.
substrate, right? And so for us, like thinking about what are all the kind of the data points that scientists and teams are looking at. When we work with teams, they're spending hours and hours looking at data points. And just kind of right next to them, there's other teams looking at the same data. And so is there a world where we can aggregate data, kind of like a PubChem or this kind of data repository that's open access, open source, and collect cost estimates for like equipment, or process estimates like yield, and things that just exist in kind of the industrial reality,
Mhm.
quantitative and also qualitative, like how do these industries work? What are the set of unit operations? How are they set up? And these are all the things that just out of the box would, we believe to be really valuable. That's bottom part of the iceberg. And at the top, like, yeah, you can have some kind of software infinitely. So we see AI as kind of like an infinitely patient coach to be able to kind of answer questions, to be able to kind of guide you and help you navigate data. Um,
Mhm.
we also see that like a lot of the data, anyways, more on this, but I think there's like kind of an AI hype world, and like how do you very thoughtfully deploy tools to be able to serve these specific use cases? And that's what we see as the TEA Commons.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love the idea, one, that as you start to do more of this work, you do develop a bit of a pattern recognition, or you're getting the benefit of kind of seeing patterns emerge across all the different teams that you're working with. So it's like, how do you put that into practice for others, and how do you accelerate everybody's kind of access to this knowledge and information?
Yeah.
Okay,
And sorry,
shifting. Yeah, go ahead.
but the one last thing I'll say of this is like, yeah, I think there's also a lot of the people aspect to it too, where like we're building a coalition of universities, accelerators, TA practitioners, corporates. Like, how do we actually all streamline this kind of innovation lab to market journey, right? And
Yeah.
so when corporate innovation arms are working with startups, and when y'all are thinking about pilots, how do you work backward from what they need to see? And so how do we kind of build up this larger, not just like the price of this is blah, but like kind of
Yeah.
what are the data points that are needed to be able to bridge along the journey?
Hmm. Hmm. That's great. Okay, we're running low on time, but I want to get one more question for you, which is, as the outlook for climate tech across sectors continues to evolve, obviously we have a changing regulatory and
Mhm.
funding landscape. What challenges and opportunities do you see specifically emerging for scientific founders, and how should people sort of think about the moment that we're in, and not just see maybe the diminished capital and some of the more worrying headlines, but think about kind of what they have to bring into this moment.
Yeah, I think, whether it's an opportunity or challenge, the reality is like the market's willingness to pay, or like the government's willingness to like fund green subsidies or the green premium is going away and going to zero. And so that's just the reality of things. And I think when we work with teams, like we're zeroing out a lot of these like subsidies, or kind of carbon credits are a plus in a world where you can get them.
Mhm.
But I think the reality is like you need to be able to have cash to survive and to be able to have impact. And so like in the intermediate, phase and of however long the kind of regulatory environment lasts, like you need to be able to drive kind of real economic value, and that comes down to like having a service or a product that performs at a spec that the market is willing to bear and willing to pay for. And then if you can do more green things, amazing. I think that's what it takes. But then I think for climate entrepreneurs, like the bar is actually even higher. Like not only do you have to be cost competitive, but then also kind of deliver value and compete against 100-year-old industries using extractive technologies that are getting things kind of from the ground. And so I think that's just the reality of things. And when we think about this like reality, we try to kind of talk to teams about that. And we really see scientists as like the core vector of our impact. The more that we can equip and train scientists, the more that they can do their amazing work. And I think that's just part of the conversations. And I think it's helpful to share like a comment for fellows. I don't know if we're
Yeah,
going to get
sure.
into that
Sure.
world. Yeah, I think that's like kind of the piece for all of these all the fellows that are graduating. Congratulations. Yeah, I think kind of when you go out to the market, like a lot of like kind of the support, a lot of the kind of support network kind of goes away when you're kind of faced with the reality of the market. So we having the, kind of the need to create products or like kind of sell things that people are willing to pay for, to do the analysis to work backward from that. And I think to make it real, this is where the TEA really comes in. Like if I were to ask any of y'all, like kind of ballpark, like, are you in the ballpark on cost? Like, where do you land? Do you have a kind of a clear sense? If you don't, call to action for you is to go and start like just putting your thoughts on paper and to like write it down, reach out, kind of put it in Excel, but like start to get some sense of like to show your work of where you land on cost and kind of competitiveness.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. All right, we're gonna leave it there for now. I know we just really scratched the surface, and I know you and Rosie are both sticking around and going to participate in the breakout rooms that we have at the end of our session. So I definitely encourage people to bring their questions and really continue this conversation in that forum in just a bit. So we're now going to segue to hearing from our fellows. And to introduce them, I want to pass the mic over to Mega from my team. Mega has been instrumental in leading this fellowship, and I'm really just so grateful for her partnership and want to give the floor to her. So thanks.
Thank you, Shayna and Jesse. That was a really great start to today's conversation. Super insightful. Jesse, I love how you were thinking about, bridging this larger ecosystem of scientists, researchers, public and private sector. So now just jumping straight into the meat of today's showcase, we are really excited for everyone here to meet the 8 fellows who have been part of our inaugural cohort. And over the last 6 months, the fellowship has supported innovators working across 3 core climate themes: urban and coastal resilience, climate data, and energy and decarbonization. So looking at the first theme, urban and coastal resilience is about helping communities adapt to climate stresses that are already there, from sea level rise and flooding to water quality and ecosystem loss. And in this theme, we have 3 really awesome fellows: Shannon from Duke University, Ty from Duke University, and Christos and Patricia from Georgia Tech, who are going to show more about how they're advancing their technologies. The next theme is the climate data theme that focuses on turning complex real-time environmental data into tools that decision makers can actually use, whether it's for flooding or wildfire management. And here we have Xiao from Georgia Tech and Charlie from NYU. Finally, we have energy and decarbonization, which, in this cohort has been focused on reducing emissions across power systems, industry, as well as the built environment. And in this segment, we have Mao from Duke University, Faraz from CUNY, and Stephanie, who's an alum from Stony Brook University. So with that, I'm really excited to start this showcase, and I'll hand it off to our first fellow, Shannon. The fellows will be presenting back to back, so feel free to drop any questions in the chat, and we'll also have time for deeper discussion in the breakout rooms after the presentations. So over to you, Shannon.
Awesome. Thanks, Mega. As Mega mentioned, I am Shannon Parker. I'm an executive in residence at Duke, working as the co-founder and head of business for ReefCycle. We originally spun out of another partner institution, Pratt, and now have been collaborating quite a bit at Duke. And really, our innovation is that we're producing the world's first enzymatic cements, offering a scalable and biomimetic solution that both decarbonizes carbon-intense cement production while still meeting those performance and cost criteria that we were just hearing about actually on the TEA. Our mission and the reason why we exist really is to transform the construction industry by creating sustainable, nature-based materials that address both climate resilient challenge and environmental restoration efforts overall. We can move on to the next slide. The problem that we face is when we look at the materials that we create, they've never historically been evaluated on environmental criteria or environmental costs. And a great example of this is cement. It's the backbone of modern infrastructure, and it drives nearly 8% of global CO2 emissions, not to mention the extractive impacts of limestone mining and the release of CO2 in the process as well. But at the same time, as we face climate change and we need to build resilient infrastructure, we have to construct better. And so we're creating this feedback loop where cement is, I'm sorry, could you please go back to the previous slide? Yeah, thank you. Where cement demand is we need more cement. The demand is increasing significantly by 50% by 2035. And we're exacerbating the exact problem that we're trying to solve. And by building resilience, we're worsening climate change. And so as society grapples with this challenge, we're looking to regulations, which are starting to require environmental product declarations and the decarbonization of cement overall. Next slide, please. Really, our solution is that we are able to use plant-based enzymes that we harness through a crude extract from waste biomaterial to create a new class of cementitious material that's produced at room temperature, rather than relying on that extractive industry that I mentioned with cement and heating it to high temperatures, releasing CO2 in the process, and using immense amounts of energy. We're able to do this in a fundamentally different way. And our cement ultimately is locally producible. It cures 93% faster than traditional Portland cement, eliminates harmful dust pollution, and has the ability to enhance strength when used as a supplemental cementitious material instead of, just the direct substitution for Portland cement. When we look in the restoration context, we also have the benefit of looking at enhanced marine biocompatibility, which we're studying in partnership right now with Duke as well. Next slide. So this is the opportunity that we're really looking to tackle. First and foremost, our early pilots have all been in prefabricated concrete modules for the restoration industry, looking at global oyster reef and coral reef restoration. But ultimately, our ambition is expanding into the $160 billion marine infrastructure and ultimately $400 billion cement industry. And while each of those customers has specific pain points that they're challenging, broadly, we can address a lot of these, including cracking and strength in the actual curing of the cement and the concrete, that cure time, biocompatibility, and deployment challenges. So it's a really robust solution that, depending on the application and how we apply it, provides immense value to our customers overall. Our early customers have been those restoration product developers, such as the Billion Oyster Project there on Governor's Island, right next to the New York Climate Exchange, but also coastal property and infrastructure asset owners and developers. We're working right now through the Sustainable Solutions Challenge to actually pilot this in the new campus that you got to see behind Shayna there in her photo and early on in this presentation. Next slide, please. The fellowship experience for us, you'll see on the next slide, we've been around since early 2024. And the fellowship experience for us was actually taking a bit of a step back and intentionally trying to focus on two key things. We talk about both restoration and cement, and sometimes that narrative can be challenging to balance in our customers and with our investors. And so got incredible one-on-one mentorship through the Climate Exchange to go through and develop a clearer communication target for that, which will inform our pitch deck and materials going forward. We also are unique in the sense that we have spun out of a university and so are independently seeking legal support and consultation. And the fellowship was invaluable in connecting us to folks that not only got our process and technology, but that we're prepared to move forward with for our second patent application. Next slide, please. Here is really the overall roadmap of where we are and where we're headed. Like I mentioned, we've done a few accelerators. We started in 2024, converted into a C Corp and raised early fundraising. And now we're focused on that second patent application, completing this fellowship, and ultimately deployment of our initial product sales, as well as that on-land demonstration project in partnership with the New York Climate Exchange campus. And final slide. There we go. This is what we're looking for next. I welcome anybody to stay in touch with me as well. We're really beginning to think about pursuing further non-dilutive funding as well as our seed round and open to having any further conversations on that.
Cool. Hi, I'm Ty Roach. I am faculty at Duke University and also San Diego State University, and the founder and CEO of a company called Wholome on the next slide. And so what Wholome does is we design, engineer, and deploy infrastructure for whole ecosystem restoration. And I'm going to highlight today our flagship product, the Wholome Arks, which are a midwater technology that we use to restore coral reefs. Next slide. And so the problem we're facing is one most of you are probably already familiar with, that coral reefs are dying at an unprecedented rate. So in fact, we've lost over half of the world's reefs in the last 50 years. But the problem's twofold. Not only are reefs dying faster than ever, we also see that restoration is failing more or less miserably. And of course, there are those restoration operations that are successful in the sense that they're growing coral, but that's all they're growing is typically a single species of coral. So they're not bringing back the biodiversity in these ecosystems that we need to produce the ecosystem services like coastal protection, food securities, and things like that. And so the solution we've come up with, next slide, at Wholome are what we call Wholome Arks. So these are modular, scalable technologies that we float in the midwater. So we're moving restoration from the degraded seafloors up into the water column. And this allows us to do a couple things. So first, it puts us in an environment where the restoration actually works. So it gets us away from the seafloor where we have low oxygen and bad bacteria into a better environment. Secondly, it allows us to not be confined to the two dimensions of the seafloor. So we're doing restoration in 3D. You can think of this as kind of vertical farming, but in the ocean. And so by taking advantage of that extra space, we're able to do much larger restoration projects than anything ever done before. And lastly, by floating these projects, they become movable. And so once we collect and concentrate biodiversity on an ark, we can then move it to a new site and use it to propagate that biodiversity to degraded reefs that need it most. But not only can we move them from site to site, we can also move them up and down in the water column, which allows us to actually mitigate climate stress. So for example, at Kaust in Saudi Arabia, we have 10 arks, and they were recently hit by a major marine heat wave, which pretty much decimated all of the restoration efforts in the area. But by moving the arks down in the water column, we were able to survive that heat wave, and showing that we've really engineered climate resilience into our technology from the base, and that we're really starting a climate-wise restoration version. So next slide. And the data is really clear. So coral survives about twice as well on our technology. It grows about twice as fast, and we have significantly lower biofouling, and we support huge food chains full of lots of fish. And I could walk y'all through these graphs, but I'd rather just show you a video. So this is after about 6 months. You can see that we have a really diverse reef system here. We have not just hard corals, but soft corals, anemones, sponges, fishes, kind of everything you would need for a reef. And after a year and a half time, you see that this scales up exponentially. So we estimate there's about 40,000 fish per ark. And each ark has its own resident school of fish that looks like this. And you can see there's not just small fish, there's larger fish. It goes all the way up the food chain to things like barracudas and sharks. So we see that we're not just restoring coral, we're restoring whole ecosystems and the services they provide. So things like coastal protection, food security through fisheries, and biodiversity reservoirs for natural products discovery. And so where are we at today? So we have 16 arks. That number actually just increased since I made this slide this week. So we're now at 18 arks in 5 regions across 4 countries. And I want to highlight a couple of those deployments. So on the next slide. So this is our first ark that was deployed in Puerto Rico as part of a partnership with the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. Navy, who's formally recognized arks as a mitigation strategy. So I want to highlight that first to show that we do have government buy-in. But secondly, these arks in Puerto Rico have been through multiple named hurricanes, kind of highlighting the robustness of our technology in the face of major climate events. But also, we've been able to start to research how to anchor these arks back to the bottom which is giving us insight into how we might make seawalls or breakwaters or other coastal or port infrastructure in the future using our technology. Next slide. So I also want to highlight a recent partnership with this facility called the Biosphere 2. The Biosphere 2 was originally designed to figure out how we would colonize the moon and colonize Mars, but it has since become one of the world's foremost ecological research institutions. And on the next slide, you'll see that we have the Biosphere 2 ocean, which is inside that facility, and it's the world's largest experimental ocean system. And they've dedicated this system to the Arks product for the next 3 to 5 years. We've already installed 3 Arks there with plans to install 15 more over the next year. And this allows us to just really rapidly enhance our TRL score in a way that wouldn't be possible out in a natural environment, and doing so in a way that really mitigates possible risks. And so on the next slide, I'll highlight that through the Biosphere 2, we were actually able to get funding for a capstone engineering course. And so this helps push our TRL even further and gets students engaged in the engineering deliverables. And then lastly, I'll highlight a recent partnership with several NGOs in Sri Lanka, where we've been developing a scaling model specifically for low and middle income countries to ensure that we have a fair and equitable use of our technology in the countries that need it most. And so if you'll go on to the next one. So of course, thank you to the New York Climate Exchange and for this fellowship opportunity. And I just want to highlight a couple of the kind of more memorable moments for me in the fellowship. The first is going to Climate Week, and I gave my first ever pitch on Arks there, which for me felt like a success because the moment I walked off the stage, I got approached by investors, one of them being NYU's Impact Investment Fund. And since then, we've actually been selected as finalists for that investment fund, and we've been nominated for quite a few other impact investment competitions. So the number of connections that the Climate Exchange Fellowship has unlocked has been really huge. On the next slide, then I'll also just kind of highlight what's a little bit of a laundry list of other things that we've accomplished during the time in the fellowship. So we've done our unit economics and supply chain analysis and really validated our supply chain, found alternate suppliers and regional suppliers. We've developed a grant writing kit for our partners to be able to request funding to deploy the Arks. And so this has been really huge to kind of getting them out in the world. We also have about $5 million in pending funding through LOIs right now. And we've hired 5 full-time interns, which have helped us develop a brand book and a recurring newsletter that we've been sending out. So what do we look like in the future? So over the next decade, I'd really like to see 100,000 Arks deployed around the world. If we did that, that would be the largest reef restoration effort ever undertaken. But it wouldn't just be the largest. We estimate that if we can get those 100,000 Arks out there, that would conserve and concentrate about 85% of the global reef biodiversity. So it would be the largest and the most biodiverse restoration effort ever done. And I want to highlight under the ecotourism bullet here, I have this vision of what we would call Arks Parks, for lack of a better name. And these would be sites where we have hundreds or thousands of Arks, along with other entertainment and art installations underwater. And you can picture this like the Disney of coral reef restoration. So not only are we doing active restoration, but we're also providing an education and outreach platform that also serves as a tourist destination. So you would bring in snorkelers, divers, glass bottom boat tours, and all those types of things that would drive a local economy. But most importantly, it would make restoration a financially and ecologically sustainable venture, which previously it has not been. So I think that's really a vision that I would like to see happen. And in order to do that, we're seeking a flagship deployment partner for our first Arks Park. And we're looking for about $3.5 million in catalytic capital to scale our deployments in the field and establish a financially sustainable model. With that, I just want to say thank you to all of our partners and funders on the next slide. Of course, particularly Duke. And yeah, if you'll take your phone out, scan the QR code, check out our website. Feel free to follow us on social media, Instagram, YouTube, all those things. But yeah, thanks so much for everyone's time. Let me know if you have questions in the chat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Stathatou. I'm an assistant professor at Georgia Tech, and together with Christos Athanasiou, who is also an assistant professor at Georgia Tech, we have developed this yeast-enabled platform in order to remove micropollutants from water. So if you move to the next slide, what we are doing by using this bio-based environmentally benign yeast platform is that we provide safe, clean water, particularly following disaster. And the problem that we are tackling is the release of toxic and persistent micropollutants into drinking water, particularly from climate-driven disasters, aging infrastructure, mining runoff, and e-waste contamination. So our solution is a scalable, low-cost, and readily deployable water technology, which can remove toxic micropollutants and particularly lead out of water without generating harmful secondary waste. And to do so, we target residential point-of-use filtration systems, municipal utilities, emergency responders, and resilience programs. So if you move to the next slide, to dive into the problem a little bit, we are tackling lead, particularly in trace concentrations in drinking water. And lead in drinking water causes death and illnesses, is associated with resource consumption and toxicity, and results in high financial costs in order to be removed. So if we move to the next slide, annually in the US, we have about 400,000 fatalities from lead poisoning, with 80,000 out of those being due to lead in drinking water. Just for perspective, this is 4 times more than deaths caused from brain cancer and 2x more than deaths from gun-related injuries. And because lead is a neurotoxin, which can cause brain damage, particularly to young children, the US EPA has established that there is no safe level of lead in drinking water. So the target concentration that we should look at is 0. The existing removal technologies to get rid of micropollutants like lead are problematic because they require significant amounts of energy. They generate toxic sludge, and they are very resource intensive. So we also found that the current spending of those technologies across the nation is over $1 billion per year. Hence, there is a significant room for financial savings that we estimate being about $300 million per year if we switch to bio-based technologies like ours. So if you move to the next slide, believe it or not, we found the solution in the process of beer making. And why is that? So in the next slide, this is because we use the surplus yeast after beer fermentation. And this is not only limited to beer making, it applies to any industrial fermentation setting. So surplus yeast is an abundant resource. It's inexpensive because it's low value or even negative value. So companies out there and industries are even paying to get this biomass disposed of. It's circular and it's very effective because we can achieve rapid removal in less than 5 minutes of contact with the target pollutant. So if we move to the next slide, what we are doing with this yeast is that we embed it in these polymer capsules that you see there. And we build these packed bed reactors with those yeast embedded capsules that can run continuously, being fed with lead contaminated water in the inlet and provide clean water in their outlet. So if we move to the next slide, our solution has attracted attention from the research community, from several local societies, and it was also featured in several mass media outlets. If we move to the next slide, we have also published 2 peer-reviewed papers describing how this technology operates, and we filed 2 utility patents. So in the next slide, our milestones and roadmap for the next 5 years or so is to continue our research in order to demonstrate the circularity of the idea and to expand to additional pollutants. We are in the process of preparing an SBIR in order to develop a startup and proceed from lab to market, and eventually would like to develop a pilot scale showcase of this technology. So next slide. Through that fellowship with the NYC, which we are particularly grateful for, we gain clarity on the practical steps that are required in order to move our technology from lab to market. We learned that we can build early momentum, including hiring support without having securing funding first. And this is very important for us because we are trying now by doing baby steps to commercialize our technology, and we are looking for co-founders. We recognize the importance of early strategic partnerships. We got invaluable mentorship and connections, and we had helped to develop a roadmap that can really help us go forward. So in the next slide, what's next for us is to continue connecting with municipal utilities, residential filtration partners, advisors, and people who can, in general, help us deploy and test our technology and even attract funding. We will try to prototype a solution and do a validation and submit the SBIR proposal in the months to come. And what we are looking for is connections, introduction to potential pilot sites, manufacturing partners, or partners that can help us support the next steps in any possible way. So thank you so much. And of course, yeah, our emails, and you can stay in touch.
Okay, good morning. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you our work. Next slide, please. So the problem that we're solving is about using artificial intelligence and machine learning for wildfire and smoke spread analysis. And also we would like to, address various problems arising from energy, environment, and community resilience. Wildfires adds a compounding pressure on societal resilience. For example, starting from the energy sector, for example, utilities must balance the risk of power line ignitions and power transmission and distribution to prevent further outbreaks. And then these outages or outbreaks really test our community resilience by, for example, severing access to cooling, communications, and life-saving medical devices. And the economic fallout is most visible in, for example, insurance markets, where events like the 2025 Los Angeles wildfires cost over 40 billion in insurance losses. And finally, the health impacts, extend far beyond the burning areas, as toxic smoke can travel for a long distance, and the loss of power disrupts the cold chain for medicine and food, causing lots of long-term environmental concerns and problems. So our solution hinges on building novel AI foundation models for wildfire and leverage the AI foundation model for various downstream applications. So if you look at an AI foundation model, this type of AI foundation model involves the previous slides, please. Can we go back to the yes, thank you. So the AI foundation models usually involve 3 stages, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, from pre-training, adaptation, and downstream applications. So in the pre-training stage, so we train the data using data from the previous 50, 40 years. We use environmental data, weather data, historical fire data, and we also use synthetic data generated from computer simulation models. So based on the pre-trained AI foundation model, in the adaptation stage, that's the middle part of this slide, the model is adapted and fine-tuned using new data sets. For example, the real-time data streams collected from satellite during the active fire, episodes. We can always tune the model to, improve the model performance in real time. And finally, in the downstream application stage, the tune model can be applied to various downstream applications. This is really one of the major benefits of building AI foundation models, in the sense that we're not directly use the AI foundation models, but we want to tune the AI foundation models such that we can apply this foundation model to address various problems arising from different domains. For example, here I just give 2 examples. We can use the model to assess infrastructure risk for example, power grid, fire ignition risk, And we can also use this model to assess our community risk, for example, and then we can come up with better home insurance plans, for example. Next slide, please. Yes, and talking about the opportunities and solutions because of the nature of the AI foundation model and how we use AI foundation models, as I just explained, we're able to find plenty of application scenarios and use cases for the fire foundation models that we're currently building, ranging from, if you look at the top layer of this figure, from insurance policies, infrastructure risks, simple forecasting problems, community risk analysis, long-term planning problems. And of course, we can also work on the energy trading, and we can apply this model in electricity markets and so on. And these specialized models perform specific tasks at scale and to achieve data efficiency, to achieve computational efficiency, to achieve the ability to generalize. So these are the main advantages of the AI foundation models we're building and its potentials. Next slide, please. Yes. And next, what we plan to do is really to integrate these algorithms and models into a product and make the product available for real-time operations. And so this requires us to perform, comprehensive product testing in real time for active fires. That's one of our main focuses in the next stage. In terms of the resources and the support that we may need, we definitely need the funding and continuing support to expand our team, to expand our, testing, tasks. And we're also looking for collaborations with other business in the same field. Because if you think about the nature of AI foundation model, so we need to apply this model, tune this model for different use cases and applications. We definitely need to find collaborators from different domains so that we can test the capability of the model. In terms of the fellowship experience, I can say lots of good things about New York Climate Exchange, and this is actually one of the most special and rewarding experiences in my career so far. I really appreciate all the trainings that I received over the past couple of months. And these activities really kept me motivated, made me think about what I'm doing, and forced me to make adjustments and reprioritize my tasks. It's really a privilege for me to, get to know many brilliant minds and energetic persons who share common goals in this area. I'm grateful for the support and help from New York Climate Change, from its, wonderful staff, Shannon, Mega, and many others. And the next slide, please. Yes, what's next is that definitely we're looking for advice, and we're looking for connections and feedback, and we're looking for fundings to support additional, especially the testing and implementation task of this AI foundation model. And currently, as I already mentioned, we focus on integration of the algorithms and models into a product and make this product available for real-time operations. And the last bullet point, what is your ask? Our ask for the audience is really that we're looking for testing cases and partnership so that we can test the capability of our model. Okay, so this is my very last slide. I will be happy to have more conversations with you. So you can see my personal contact on this page and also the link to my personal webpage. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity. So I'm going to be talking today about FloodNet. Next slide, please. So just to describe what FloodNet is, so we are developing tools for real-time actionable flood monitoring to support community-scale resilience in urban neighborhoods. And this is our first shameless and caveat-dependent boast that we are the largest overland flood sensor deployment in the US. You can see our deployment map on the right in New York City. We have over 350 sensors deployed currently, with an aim to deploy 500 by the end of this calendar year. We have many years of overland sensing experience, keyword overland there. We have some fantastic AI-driven data processing pipelines to clean and process data. And we currently have our New York City contract, where funded by the city. So we have this proven city scale operational over the last 5 years. Next slide, please. So the problem we're trying to tackle is flooding, and this is accelerating and is overwhelming the reactive workflows that are currently deployed to tackle this kind of situation. And there's a huge financial impact to the US with anywhere between 180 and 500 billion in costs annually to the US alone. So most of the existing monitoring systems are typically over nearby waterways. In the case of New York, that's not very nearby, and that doesn't really translate up to flooding on over streets from rainfall. You have rainfall data that's at very low resolution, and you have human reporting, which tends to come in when the flooding is going to reach a point where cars are flooding, cars are stuck in the water, or water is rushing into homes or basement properties. So our initial target market here of emergency managers, they're expected now to deliver faster and more targeted responses to flooding with limited staff and data at hand. So FloodNet does now deliver a street level flood data layer that is feasible and proven at scale across New York City. And this has been enabled by the development of our ultra low power sensor technologies to measure the actual water levels, and our advanced AI data driven pipelines and flows that enable intelligence to be delivered to these stakeholders. So to drill down on some of these pain points that we uncovered through our customer discovery with emergency managers, so they are lacking the street level visibility of the ongoing flood conditions. And the calls and field reports coming from 311 and 911, they arrive late, they're inconsistent, they're hard to zero in on. And what we can offer to help mitigate this is this purpose-built street level sensor deployments, giving you that on the ground intelligence. There's proven reliability from our many years of deployment experience in the field with many sensors deployed. And this delivers this live street depth layer for operations, and it provides around a 1 hour advance warning before critical flood conditions occur. Next slide, please. So just to highlight the use cases here for the FloodNet system, this is an event that if you're in New York, you do remember this event. This is October 30th, 2025. So on the left, you've got the precipitation band that swept across the city, dropping unprecedented amounts of water on the city. And on the right, you're seeing our sensor network lighting up like a Christmas tree, following that band of rain and detecting flooding in all 5 boroughs across the city over a short period of time. And NISM, the emergency management agency in the city, and the National Weather Service actively use our alerts that come from our systems. Next slide, please. So another pain point that we uncovered through the customer discovery is that integrating platforms and dashboards is difficult for public sector agencies. So we wanted to make sure that our offering was already integrating with the tools that they use. So meet these groups where they are. So we've built out ArcGIS ready layers, APIs, and alerts. So that leads to a minimal IT left for integrating these services into existing tools. And we've proven this out with our ongoing work over the last few years with NISM in New York City, NYPD, and the DEP. Next slide, please. So something else that these folk need is actionable data during these incidents. It's not just it's 3 inches at this location. It's answers to questions like when do we close these roads and where do we send our limited field crews? And it's very hard for them to interpret dozens or hundreds of signals because those signals do exist. There are lots of systems they have to integrate. So the way we do this is we consolidate down a lot of the raw information into various alerts and event summaries, and we can deliver this information before an event lands, during an event, and after the event for various different case studies and use cases. So the fellowship has been fantastic. It's allowed us to do many things, but these things, the key things here was it allowed us to define our business model to potential clients. We've created a pitch deck that really allows us to put forward our solution and its clear value to our target markets. And we're now engaging in much more serious conversations with municipalities outside of the New York City to kind of bring ourselves and scale out. So as I said, we're looking at ways that we can engage with municipalities outside of New York. So if you have any contacts, if you know of any interest, please get in touch. We're also building out our back-end services to run outside of the NYC cloud infrastructure we're currently on. And we're looking for diversification of funding. We're going for NSF grants, and we're looking at ways to start the commercialization process. So last slide. Thank Thank you. Please stay in touch. And I think that's my LinkedIn that you can scan there, but send me an email, get me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mauricio Hernandez. I'm going to talk about GridSeer. GridSeer delivers a machine learning driven software and analytics platform that enhances reliability, improves sustainability, and cuts costs for energy providers and large scale users. The problem we're tackling is that energy systems face growing uncertainty from climate change, also from extreme weather, and from rising renewable penetration. And currently, most energy tools rely on single forecasts that ignore risk and variability. This weaken the reliability and resilience of the system. Also increases costs and emissions driven by fossil fuel that is mostly used during peak demand. All of these are critical barriers for clean and equitable energy integration. The solution we are proposing is a risk-aware optimization that contrasts with the deterministic or planning-only tools that you usually see in the market. Our solution is a holistic platform. We try to unify investment and infrastructure planning and operational decision-making. We propose a continuous improvement as deployment scale. We believe that deep data integration and learning over time improve planning and operation. The solution, shifting the current paradigm. Current models have like single forecasts, use average conditions, or risk dispatch of assets and hidden cost exposure. What offering is tons of scenarios, tell risk visible, use extreme cases, risk-aware scheduling of assets, and explicit cost-risk trade-offs. We believe that ignoring uncertainty doesn't remove risk, it hides it. The solution has a value by saving money, increase reliability, and improve sustainability. The platform is integrated by 3 components. The first one is a probabilistic load forecast. The second one is what we call digital twin, that is representing all assets in a mathematical way. And the dispatcher, that is the optimization tool. With these 3 components, we provide optimal operational schedules, daily operations, and simulations for planning and portfolio optimization. Next. How it works, we ingest real-time and historical data, can be load, prices, weather, asset conditions, and we produce probabilistic load forecasts. And we optimize considering humans and technical constraints. So we try to avoid our customers to pay high rates and to pollute more. We try to avoid the time of usage of high rates and also the peaks. We have demonstrated this in a study case in which we compare our solution with what currently was in the university, and we reduce the forecast error by 50%, from going from 9% to 5% error. Then we made a comparison of the way they optimize or they dispatch their assets with the optimization we offer in a thermal battery operations, and we compared the electricity cost. And we demonstrate 10% cost savings in chillers operations and also reduction in CO2 emissions, scope 2. In average, we found that the university can save around $70,000 per month, and an ROI of above 100%. Next. The opportunity we find now is to focus on commercial and industrial prosumers, and the base hub market is university campuses that are facing escalating system costs, high load variability and risk exposure, and also they are facing energy system complexities and energy demands that are growing rapidly. The key milestones are roadmap that we foresee in the next 5 years. Starting with this year, we have 2 customers. We expect to reach 200 by 2030. We expect a revenue around 150K this year, and we hope to grow to 12 million. And then we have 3 people collaborating with us, and we expect to have 35 at the end of 2030. And we are looking for investments around $2 million in this in the next year, and 6 million in 2030. The experience so far with the fellowship has been amazing. We have been able to this collaboration to refine the market segmentation, also to draft another pilot through the network we built. We have applied systematic customer discovery methods also by getting some help. We have sharpened the value proposition. What's next for us? We are raising capital for product development to build pilots and to go to market. We are also seeking strategic partners to help shape the future of the grid. And we are looking for advisors with utility and CNI energy system expertise. My name is Mauricio Hernandez. This is my my email, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Faris Al-Lahabi. I am an undergraduate engineering student at Manhattan University, and I am the CEO and co-founder for CarbonCLAIR. You could go to the next slide. Yes. CarbonCLAIR is a venture tech company that was born out of CUNY, the City College of New York. And we have a singular mission is to make clean air a standard in every urban construction site. Today, I will show you how we are moving from simple dust control into pioneering chemical scrubbing to protect workers, construction workers, and communities surrounding infrastructure projects. So to jump into the problem, operations. Up to 40% of urban particulate matter coming from construction activities. Work stoppages could cost those construction sites up to $50,000 per day, and chemical emission incidents could cost up to $80,000 per day. Compliance on such projects, such big projects in infrastructure could cost $1 million per year for those big projects, and up to $250,000 into municipal facilities to combat those air quality challenges when it comes to dust mitigation or chemical scrubbing. Next slide. How do we solving this is by a mobile air filtration unit that is able to use a technology that scrubs the chemicals and captures the particulate matter and separate them with an extremely efficient energy consumption. On the prototype on the left, that prototype uses 1,500 cubic feet per minute with an 80% bypass scrubbing or chemical scrubbing rate with only using 130 watts. On the right, it's a different unit that is focused on more active capturing method that is able to capture up to process up to 5,600 cubic feet per minute. And the market opportunity is huge. I mean, in New York City, there's $30 billion of construction projects yearly, and the immediate addressable market is $100 million with active projects within very high density urban and residential areas in New York City. So how are we accessing this market? And this is kind of goes back to Jesse's points earlier today with how to bridge the solutions to the market. And you could go to the next slide. We are tackling it with 3 active pilots. We started back in 2024 with the Mount Sinai data collection pilot for our community in Jamaica, Queens. There is neighboring a construction site, a massive infrastructure construction site, and we deployed 27 sensors within a community there to kind of collect the impact. Moving on to phase 2 in 2025, we were one of the climate solution cohorts for the Governor Islands pilot program, and we collaborated with Skanska, one of the world's biggest construction companies, on a south substation project in the island, where we deployed one of the focused units, the 5,600 cubic feet per minute active units. That deployment is also still active. Back in 2025, we had about 14 interns and a big team that worked to get that deployment running. In phase 3, which really we got this opportunity at the start of the fellowship, was with the New York City Department of Environmental Protection and collaboration with the Environmental Tech Lab, where it's a deployment within a water treatment plant within in Astoria, Queens, that will focus on the sandblasting that they're going to have over there, as well as the epoxy coating with the chemical scrubbing. Next slide. The fellowship experience has been great. Over the last 6 months, I would say, like, one thank you is to Shambur, our mentor. My meetings with him were very dynamic because of that deployment with DEP. Also, I want to thank Jamil, Claire, and Ash for their virtual modules. I learned a lot through that, kind of putting it into that course load way of going through things. And yeah, next slide. What comes next for us? We are working in the next generation of actually the scrubbing technology using plasma enhanced scrubbing. And I plan, actually, after I graduate my undergraduate in May, I will continue my PhD in technology to kind of continue developing those technologies. And I'm excited to also, we're going to get into bids in the Q3 of 2026 with a partnership with a contracting company called R&H. And we're excited to launch that as well. And that's it for me. I mean, the next slide is, I would be happy to connect with you guys. And if you guys have any questions for me, please leave them in the chat, and I would love to answer them. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Taboada, and I'm the entrepreneurial lead for HySep. Next slide, please. So before I talk about HySep, I just want to talk about what we're trying to address. So currently, the US is about the second largest carbon dioxide emitter in the world, with natural gas making up about 35% of the CO2 emissions emitted, again, within the US. And so what we're trying to do at HySep is slowly replace the amount of natural gas with hydrogen. And we're going to do this by using our existing natural gas pipelines with the goal of unlocking the green hydrogen economy. And here in this slide, you could see exactly how large our natural gas pipelines are and how vast they extend throughout the US. It's about 15,000 miles worth of pipelines. Next slide, please. So here's the problem with current hydrogen storage specifically. So hydrogen is stored in two ways. There's compressed gas, usually at 700 bars, so that's significant amount of compression there. And then for liquefied hydrogen, we require about negative 253 degrees Celsius, which is extremely cold and requires a lot of energy to keep hydrogen at that temperature. So there's money, a lot of money involved in this, and also an extremely high energy penalty because we see hydrogen being lost into the atmosphere through these two methods. And then another huge issue with hydrogen as a liquid and as a gas is that there's a huge safety risk. So when you expose hydrogen to the air, it can combust very easily, and you also can't tell when there is hydrogen in the air because it's odorless. And then finally, if we just inject hydrogen into our gas pipelines, we're going to see what's called hydrogen embrittlement. So embrittlement is this image you see here to your right, when you start to see cracks in the metal. This is again due to hydrogen. Next slide, please. So where does our solution come in? Essentially, it's a metal lattice, and this metal lattice absorbs hydrogen. So if we inject a hydrogen and natural gas blend into this metal lattice, only the hydrogen will be absorbed and the natural gas will flow out of the metal lattice. And then we can actually release hydrogen on demand, depending on the temperature and pressure that we use. So the temperature and pressure is really low, doesn't require a high amount of energy, which is great. So we can use this in conjunction with our natural gas pipelines and, of course, accelerate the deployment of the hydrogen economy. We don't have to build out a new hydrogen pipeline system. Next slide, please. So here are our early adopters. We expect gas utilities to use this because they're the ones that are operating our pipelines. In addition, this tech is great because it allows them to selectively pick which customer can take on hydrogen. Some customers are hydrogen sensitive. So here are some of those natural gas companies that we've identified, and this is about a $100 million market, and it's expected to grow to about $1 trillion by 2050. Next slide, please. And we've been very fortunate. We have about $11 million right now. A demonstration unit is underway specifically for storage validation. So it's part of a backup energy storage system that's going to be integrated at Northwell Health Hospital on Long Island. And we're expecting construction to begin sometime in the beginning of this year, followed by commissioning. And then we're going to demonstrate that this hydrogen storage actually works and validate its reliability for about a year. And then we're going to prepare for commercial deployment in parallel with these validation tests. Next slide, please. So in terms of my fellowship experience, it's been great. I was able to go through another round of customer discovery and talk to data centers, for example, to get their idea of where hydrogen stands specifically for their backup storage. And then also, most importantly, look at the next step for HySep, which is commercialization. And we've identified a few funds outside of the US. And then Climate Week has been huge, a huge part of the fellowship for me because I was able to network with stakeholders, founders, and investors. Next slide, please. And then finally, our next step is to apply for SBIR funding and actually turn this tech into commercial products, so specifically modularizing it. So we're looking for manufacturing partners that can help us. And next slide. And I'd love to stay in touch and continue this conversation. My QR code is there, as well as the inventor, Dr. Devinder Mahajan, if you'd like to get in touch with him as well. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Stephanie. I think that rounds out this portion of our time together. Just one more virtual round of applause for everyone. It's really exciting to see the progress that you've all made in a pretty short window of formally kind of working together. So congratulations to all of you. And we're, of course, very excited to continue to be part of your journey well into the future. We're going to shift gears now to our last kind of segment, our last activity together, which is breakout rooms. So what's going to happen now is everyone is going to be moved into one of 3 breakout rooms. We have Mega, who's going to lead the climate data room, Jamil Wine from the Hazelwood Network, who's been instrumental in our program, who's going to be leading the urban and coastal resilience room, and then I'll be in the energy and the decarb room. This is really meant to be a little bit more of an informal opportunity for folks to network with one another and really get into more of the nitty-gritty of what it's like for early stage innovators to kind of navigate the ecosystem, the different supports and programs that are out there. Definitely encourage people to introduce themselves and what they're working on. And if thoughts were sparked in terms of what you heard across these different presentations, definitely want to help continue those conversations. We have tapped a handful of people from each room ahead of time who are going to be prepped to join in on the conversation. So I trust there'll be a lot of ground to cover, probably more than we can do in the next 15 minutes or so. But in that spirit, definitely encourage people to drop their names, their contact details, any information about your organizations that you want this group to be aware of. Hopefully today can be the starting point for more fruitful connections. So Sonia, feel free to divvy us up. We'll meet back here just shy of 1:30 to just once again say thank you and send you off, but dive in for the next 15 minutes or so.
Great. I'm opening all the rooms now. If you find yourself in the wrong room, feel free to come back to the main room. Don't leave the entire meeting, and I can put you where you're supposed to be. And I'll be in the main room to answer any questions if people have issues. So opening the rooms now. If you're not automatically assigned, please try giving a look to the bottom of your screen. There should be a little pop-up for breakout rooms where you can choose your room if you'd like, or I can assign you. So just let me know.
Other rooms were cut off mid thought as well that time. As expected, went very, very quickly. But I want to keep us on time. I know you have generously given us 90 minutes of your time, and we want to send you off. So we've got here just ways to stay in touch with the New York Climate Exchange. Of course, our website, where you can sign up for our newsletter, and on LinkedIn is also a great way to connect. Today, again, marks the kind of capstone moment for our first cohort of this program, but we have learned a ton and are going to be applying those lessons as we plan for the next iteration of this program, which we anticipate launching the call for in the late spring in order for the cohort to kick off over the summer. So definitely stay tuned, sign up to learn more and be the first to hear about programs like this one as they launch and different formal ways to get involved with the exchange. Once again, just want to say thank you for dedicating some time to connect with the fellows here today and really appreciate it. I personally learned about a few different opportunities and calls that recently went live. So hopefully you are walking away with something that's really relevant for you as well. And thank you, and hope to see you soon at another event.
Thank you.
Amazing work, everybody. Congratulations.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
See you all soon.